Hey everyone, I'm Tom Arrakis on X. Today I'm joined by the BazAR development team. They also work on Alex. Hey Nick and Vince, how are you guys doing today?
Hey, Tom. Doing well. Thanks for having us on.
Hey, Tom, thanks for having us.
Yeah, super excited. So this has been a whirlwind of BazAR development officially started around June 15th, somewhere around there. Does that sound about right? And we launched 7 days ago, 8 days ago, August 25th now. So we launched August 15th, which was pretty cool. So that's literally like 2 months of development to ship a permaweb app. Um, what is BazAR?
So, the BazAR is the first permaweb application built on top of the UCM contract that lives in Arweave. The BazAR kind of the goal behind it was to allow for the exchange of atomic assets stored on Arweave in the exchange of the U token. So we've been working on that as a team and attempting to get that user experience of a UCM to a good standpoint in order to launch this past week.
Mhm. And
Very
I would,
cool.
sorry,
Go
Tom.
ahead, Nick. Vince.
So I was just saying, I would add like development really started back when, like we started talking about making a fast currency, and then the Justin with Permafax got started on you, and like in a way, that's when all this really started. We're like, okay, we need a market. And it was like, okay, do we have a currency that will work? And we came to the conclusion, no. And then they also needed you to run other permaweb apps. So U was started as like a currency that could be used for like the rapid exchange of assets through SmartWeave.
Yeah, that's a great point. So we've been on this journey with the permaweb and atomic assets, and really wanting to be able to trade these assets. We started with this uh, token U, which is like unit of account, because you can't spend R on Arweave contracts, right? A contract can't have a balance of R. So U is kind of this way to burn R and create this token that can be used to trade atomic assets. Does that sound about right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think quickly just to go off of that, did we lose Vince here?
Yeah, we lost Vince.
I can keep going on. Just to add on his point, I think with the creation of you and kind of the journey we've been on with atomic assets, putting those two pieces together, really I think sparked the idea of, oh, we now have the ability to allow content creators to upload their content to Arweave, potentially make revenue off it, and do it in a trustless, decentralized way, as opposed to putting it on a platform that may censor content or things like that.
Very cool. So we've got you, and now another kind of building block of BazAR to really make it work is what you mentioned is UCM, or Universal Content Marketplace. Do you want to describe what that is?
Yeah, I can dive into that a little bit. So the UCM really is a trustless exchange for atomic assets on Arweave. Trustless meaning it is a completely decentralized protocol that allows anyone to transfer assets to other wallets or for the sale of U, for example. And with the creation of the UCM, that was really kind of the final building block on top of atomic assets themselves and the U token to put all the pieces together to build a marketplace application for users to interact with.
Mhm.
Vince, anything to add from your side?
Yeah, I think the way the UCM, Tom, that you designed it essentially was to have the exchange without having the exchange. So it can operate on its own as a contract and hold the asset balances and exchange them for currency without any centralized exchange. That was like the key focus. And it's a cool design, kind of like, the orders go in and they come out in the same way. Like the interaction looks the same from a code standpoint. And it's sort of like the only flow we use right now is that limit, sell, and market buy. Correct me if I'm wrong there, Tom. And the limit sell looks very similar to the market buy on both ends. So it's kind of cool if you like interact with the Universal Content Marketplace to see that.
Yeah, that's right. It's if you create an order with a price, it's a limit order. But if you create an order and you don't give it a price, it's a market order, right? It takes the market price. So yeah, and BazAR is built on top of it. One more note to the UCM is we envision several different user interfaces on the permaweb built on top of UCM. So whether it's trading tokens like U for stamps, or it's trading atomic assets. So very cool. And then there's one other kind of big piece to BazAR, the UDL. Does anyone want to take a stab at kind of describing what the UDL is?
Yeah, so the UDL stands for the Universal Data License, and is a new license created on Arweave that allows anyone to attach real world rights to the assets they deploy, the atomic assets they deploy on Arweave. By real world rights, that kind of means you can set terms for how people are allowed to interact with your data or use your data for their own purposes. For example, if I deploy an asset with a license fee of 0.1 U to use that asset for commercial use, that means that whoever wants to do so has to pay that fee in order to use the data. So it actually allows you to create your own revenue streams on assets that you create, also in a decentralized way that's owned by you and not really owned by any platform that says you have to pay this to use this person's data. It's completely up to your discretion, which is a super, super cool and brand new feature of Arweave.
And you could see that in action, Tom. If you pull up an asset with a UDL license, you can see where you actually have the opportunity to interact with the parameters that the programmer has set on that asset. So basically the UDL is attached as a tag permanently to this asset, and that pay license is there as a result of the parameters they set on their UDL license. So they're telling you have to pay your one-time fee. So we always permanently have the ability to say, okay, I want to render a payment option here in the UI.
And I think,
right.
Sorry, Vince, didn't mean to cut you off there. I think another awesome implementation of the UDL was just put out super recently with Greg's audio renderer, which actually implements the logic of the UDL like right in the code. He created an audio collection that allows you to listen to a preview of each track, but in order to listen to the full track, you have to pay the license fee to do so, which I thought was a really cool implementation of what the UDL is.
Right. So that's like actual functionality driven by this license, which is attached by the tag and has real legal implications because of the nature of the UDL and how it was written.
Yeah, that's pretty exciting, I think, especially with videos and music and things like that, where you may want to provide a sample, but then if you want to have access to the full song, you can, license it right there in the interface. And
100%.
yeah, so BazAR really makes a lot of, you know, um, a lot of um, advantages of using renderers, right? And renderers are unique to the permaweb, but this, you know, kind of is a renderer right here. You want to explain kind of from a development standpoint how that's working?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I guess maybe we should have started with this kind of talking about atomic assets in general, but atomic assets on Arweave aren't necessarily just a PNG or JPEG image stored on chain. It really can be any type of data that the developer wants to deploy. And in this case, this type of asset is known as a renderer, meaning the data deployed on Arweave has a tag that says render with, and that tag uses another transaction or application stored on Arweave to render that data in a specific way. In this case, it takes this audio data and it says render it in this way, render it in this application that enforces a UDL license fee in order to access the data, which I'm not sure if that's the best render explanation, but it's really encapsulates like the capabilities of what you can do with that specific tag render with, and how you're able to kind of change how the data is displayed and interacted with, and things like that. Vince, I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I would just say like it's the permanence of the data on Arweave that allows for a renderer to be useful. Like alongside your data transaction, you have permanently attached a piece of code that renders that data. So it's like in perpetuity, we'll be able to pull this little music playing box anywhere without anything external running, except that you can pull that data and that code into wherever you want and you know, call the render and render it, because the render itself is stored on Arweave. So
yeah, and we've seen already in the BazAR the different types of render assets, which is pretty cool. This we have this audio renderer which has music kind of behind a licensed asset that enforces you to pay the fee to access the audio data. I believe there's a 3D asset somewhere in the BazAR. That might be it right there, Tom. This is a piece of data that's rendered in a 3D library of some sort. I'm honestly not
yeah,
sure.
I just had to buy into this one. As soon as I saw it, I was like, that's cool.
Right. So yeah, that's just kind of two examples right off the bat that show data rendered in vastly different ways, because developers have the capability to kind of build their own little applications to be sold as assets.
And those are attached in the same way as the licenses, but they're completely different concepts. Like the render is for UI purposes, and the licenses for, you know, those legal and payment and stuff like that. So it's two different concepts that you can represent permanently alongside your data via a tag.
Very cool. Yeah, so I think that really just opens up all kinds of possibilities, right? Where 3D artists, musicians, video artists can literally publish their content on Arweave, make it an atomic asset, and then license and trade it through interfaces like BazAR.
Yeah, I think that's a great explanation. And, we hope with the BazAR being the first user interface built on the UCM, it could maybe help inspiration for, a whole bunch of other user interfaces built on UCM that offer, all types of different functionality, which would be super exciting.
Yeah, that's very cool. So one of the things that I was super excited about, since I love the stamp protocol, but basically how you guys used stamps to kind of drive the leaderboard. How was it integrating stamps and working with it to really kind of organize your assets in a way that shows the most stamped up at the top, I guess?
The aggregate was key. So that aggregate call that you built into it, where you can send it a bunch of, IDs at once and say, here's all the counts. Correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but I recall when we first went to implement this, that was the key portion.
Yeah.
Basically with stamps, you can say, here's a big list of IDs. Give me all the counts for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And I think the more we started to work with the Stamp SDK, the easier it became, and the more I think we started to realize like the interoperability of everything. We realized like, okay, you can put a stamp on any transaction ever, and atomic assets are, a transaction at its like core. So, it's really just like naturally how what we build on Arweave can like behave with one another. And like I think once we started to realize that, like I think BazAR was a really good like we learned so much building this app because we realized how like interoperable really everything is, and like integrating the Stamp SDK became really smooth once that became really apparent in like I guess like from a code standpoint, because you kind of right.
Yeah. And in these like open systems like this, you need some kind of ranking.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing we always run to now is, what exists as stamps.
Mm-hmm.
Like, cause you need a way for things to go to the top. You need a way for content to stand out. Otherwise, you can just flood that homepage with stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, something that I thought was pretty cool. Like just one day, I think mid development, I was like, it's kind of looking at other marketplaces and just like, checking them out and seeing, how they operate. And, you see in every one that there's always a rank to the NFTs on them. And it's always, you really like, I couldn't entirely tell what the rank was based on. And, I just kind of like won through whatever. And then I thought it was pretty cool looking back at BazAR. There's like just like a natural ranking system with the stamp count. It's like Arweave's own ranking system that you built, Tom, that allowed us to like really build out the UI properly, which I thought was pretty exciting.
Very cool. Yeah. So 2 months. How would you rate this development experience? Obviously, we're forging ahead with all of these new concepts. So it was it was challenging, but what did you learn? What was your biggest takeaway as we built this together?
Yeah, so there's certainly a bunch of ups and downs, throughout the whole process. And there's many challenges we faced. But I think at the end of the day, what we learned, at least from my perspective, is I kind of just touched on it, like really understanding the interoperability of making contracts work together, making the transactions work together on Arweave, because it's really, all just Arweave backed data at the end of the day. And learning how to make those things communicate with each other and, kind of work together to make the whole system work, like the UCM, the UDL, atomic assets themselves, making because all of those things are very like apparent in the system, and making them all work together, I thought was what I learned the most, and what I, am going to take to like maybe every new application I build. And, I think I'll be a lot like clearer with it moving forward.
Very cool.
Yep. I would, agree with everything Nick said and say, it's been a great experience. Learned a lot with just working through. One thing I learned is like, okay, some concepts started simple, like, okay, we need a swap marketplace that can swap these assets for currency. That developed into, a full-fledged concept called the UCM. And I thought that was pretty cool. because I wasn't thinking about it necessarily that way in the beginning, but now it's like, okay, the UCM is a protocol that we can build on, and that can come out of, a fundamental piece of what you want your end result to be.
Very
And
cool.
totally separate. It's a totally separate thing now than the BazAR itself.
Yeah. I think I think because it's a little bit new, kind of building where you're on the permaweb, and one of your core principles is composability, right? Let's don't reinvent the wheel for things that are kind of very generic, right? Being able to, trade one asset for currency, that's a generic thing. It doesn't have to be an app specific thing. To stamp something is a generic thing. It doesn't have to be an app specific thing. So I think what we'll start seeing the benefit of this as we go forward is like now, Alex is automatically composable with BazAR, right? So as you mint real world assets through Alex, those assets can eventually be listed on BazAR. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah, 100%. That's actually something we're working on right now as a team is kind of the integration of getting the ability to list Alex artifacts on the BazAR and collections of artifacts in the BazAR, which we're super excited about. I think it'll really um, like help showcase more so like composability and what we're able to do with all the data.
Yeah, 100%. And then, kind of another kind of key tenet is the kind of the cold start problem, right? So if you have an idea to build another kind of app, you don't have to start with zero data or the ability to trade or the ability to stamp. You can kind of focus on your core prop for that app. And now if your data pushes on Arweave as atomic assets, they're tradable, they're stampable, right? That's pretty neat, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again for your time. This is pretty awesome, and great job at this project. I know it's been a long few weeks, but any kind of parting shots, anything you'd like to say to future permaweb developers?
Yeah, sure. So first off, thanks for having us, Tom. This was super fun. Yeah, I hope the BazAR can kind of maybe pave the way for developers seeing that what's capable on top of the UCM and on top of all the other protocols on Arweave. And I would just be super excited to see the new ideas that come up as far as permaweb applications built on top of the UCM and just like Arweave in general. And every roadblock we've faced, we've always found a solution for it, and that was always a really, really good feeling.
Cool.
Yep. Second all that. And it's been a great experience working with you guys, and just looking forward to seeing how this thing continues to grow.
All right. Yeah, same here. And yeah, thanks again for coming on, and look forward to see what comes next. So thanks again.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
All right. See you.